Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my mini ranking of the 2020 Black Narcissus mini-series, television mini-series. So I'll be ranking the 3 episodes from this mini-series. It's a mini ranking, so hopefully there won't be too much. I don't have much battery on this phone there, so I haven't got an awful lot of time, so I'll just get down to it. Now, I've already explained throughout the reviews that this series has kind of let me down a little bit. Whilst we have some great religious drama, whilst I'm not too worried about religious drama really. In the context of this series, I thought it worked really well. Maybe people who are more well known about religious dramas or more into them, maybe they can give me their thoughts about how it went down. But for me, as a television viewer, and someone who doesn't really care for such things that much, but I still checked this out anyway because I was interested. But I thought it was handled well, the religious drama, but the series was also supposed to be a horror series, or at least have some inclinations of the supernatural. And that was a major letdown, with the exception of when the character of Sister Ruth went mad towards the end of the final episode. But even then, there wasn't a huge amount of connection with the supernatural. As I mentioned in both my reviews of episodes 2 and 3, they could easily have gone down the psychological horror route, the psychological route where they went a bit mad. Perhaps there would have been a bit more of a psychological horror in there, but maybe they just went a bit mad. Or they kept it completely as religious drama, and the character of Ruth just went on a journey that eventually she realized she didn't want this life anymore at the very end. Or we got more of the supernatural stuff in the episode, so it actually built up that stuff in the story. But what we got in this miniseries, at least, I don't think worked very well. I'm not sure how much it is in the book or the 1947 film at time recording. I will check out the 1947 film and review that on the Nicholas Payne Retro channel. Hopefully that will come out tomorrow if I've got my times right. But I don't know about any of the other versions, if there's any other versions besides the 47 film. But for this version, the supernatural element, if it was in the original story, it was very, very underplayed. Apart from the final bit. Yeah, we got hints of it, but it didn't really come to anything apart from Ruth going mad. But even then, it could have been explained better. And because of that, I felt the series was a bit disappointing, not to mention it was very slow for about 2 episodes. It was very slow. The last episode picked up the pace a bit, and there was some great stuff in the first 2, but it was still pretty damn slow. The first one I could forgive, but the second one, not so much. So, with that being said, on to the ranking. By the way, the episodes are just episode 1, episode 2, and episode 3. There's no title for these, like the Serpent, there's just episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. So starting with number 3, and even though this episode was mostly set up, I still think we could have picked up the pace a bit more. It is episode 1. A good, decent setup story, but really needed to pick up the pace after the 25-minute mark, and really should have had a bit more of the spooky goings on stuff, if they were even going to bother with the spooky goings on stuff, which, like I said, it was a bit of a disappointment, really, besides the Ruth going mad stuff that we'll get to episode 3 in a bit. But I feel episode 1 was a good setup to the series, good establishing the characters, good establishing the setting, but it just went on a bit too long without anything that significant around at least around the middle. It started to hint at spooky goings on stuff, but considering how underplayed it was to begin with, it wasn't that well handled. The religious drama stuff was well done, but I think this episode could have had a bit more going for it. Okay, moving on to number 2, and this one again, pick up the pace and have a bit more going for it, especially on the supernatural side. But there was some really good scenes in it, especially the opening scene. That was really well handled. Number 2 is episode 2. Yeah, as I just explained, the opening scene is a brilliant. I think that's probably the best scene of the series prior to the roof going mad scenes in episode 3. So this one was really well handled. However, after that, the episode started to go downhill again. It started to go back into the slow, draggy territory that episode 1 had managed to get itself out of with the last couple of minutes. So it feels like a break to get audience excited at the end of the last episode and at the beginning of this one before we go back to business as usual for a bit. Which is a bit of a tease, but then again, cliffhanger, I suppose. So, yeah, and you got to resolve it. But yeah, I feel like this episode was a bit too slow. Character-wise, it was still working pretty well, but again, the supernatural stuff wasn't too great. And I thought it was a bit disappointing. It was so it was so slow. It just didn't really do an awful lot for me. This was also the episode where I got constant interruptions, but I'm not going to judge the episode based on that. I'm judging the episode on how it was presented and what was going on in it. And unfortunately, not an awful lot did go on. It's just a bit. Not much happened. I suppose not at least not until Christmas anyway. And I think we got a bit more character growth, but there wasn't an awful lot going on in the episode after the first scene and before the Christmas stuff. Which brings me to number 1. Number 1 managed to sort of fix some of these problems the first two had. It picked up the pace a bit more. The character growth was great. In fact, one character who had feck all to do in the first two managed to get some character development around halfway through the final episode. About bloody time. It's such a shame it's so late in the game, but about time. Better late than never, I suppose. And then the final, 10, 15, 20 minutes was brilliant. Although there wasn't an awful lot connecting it with the supernatural element, which was a massive letdown. Number 1 is episode 3. Yeah, like I mentioned, the character growth is great in this episode. The first two, it was really good, but the third one, it reached a few new levels. The pacing picked up a little bit more around the 20-minute mark. I suppose it was a bit slow to begin with, but it picked up. And the character of Ruth was handled so well in that episode. I thought that story was done really well, minus the supernatural connection, because that one was a major disappointment. But the rest of the Ruth story was handled really well. And the character's stuff with our main character was also handled really well. But I still think it was a bit of a letdown because we've been building up this supernatural ghost being that was the princess who, when she committed suicide 20 years prior. And it comes to, I suppose, maybe possessing Ruth, but other than that, feck all. And if it was possessing Ruth, it wasn't as explained well, not in dialogue, not in action. It was just slowly going mad. That was about it. And I'm happy with her going mad. I thought that was handled really well. But we've got this whole supernatural element to the side, and they do feck all with it, or they don't explain it as well as they could have, which is a massive shame. So, in all honesty, this series succeeds as a religious drama, but it absolutely fails as a horror series. In fact, it fails as a supernatural series because the supernatural stuff barely there. There's a few bits here and there, and the Ruth stuff sort of is connected, but it's not very well connected. It's very, very underdone. The Ruth going mad stuff, as I mentioned, could easily have been psychological. Or they could have explained it more. But as it was, whilst the Ruth stuff was brilliant, the connection to the supernatural horror side was disappointing. And I think that's this series' biggest flaw. If you're going to have supernatural stuff in this series, which is more of a religious drama, then actually have some supernatural stuff going on. Don't just have a character just go mad and claim that maybe the princess has some sort of influence over the ghost of the princess. Actually explain it, or just say she's going mad. I mean, the place kind of makes people go mad anyway. The fact that it's a remote location high in the mountains could make people go mad. That is easily explainable and makes sense. Or she wants out and she's going mad over the idea of that, and the fact she's in isolation kind of doesn't help. And They have mentioned that the characters will be lonely. The Diana Riggs character said that the characters might be lonely up there. Yeah, that could have been exactly how the character went mad. Or, and I've said this so many times, or they up the supernatural element, they up the horror, and they explain how the ghost of the princess or the spirit of the princess is affecting Ruth and all that. But whilst I liked Ruth's descent into madness, I think this connection with the ghost slash spirit was extremely disappointing. So in short, this series succeeded as a religious drama, but failed as a supernatural horror, or even have anything to do with the supernatural, because it was barely used. And the best stuff about it wasn't really that much connected to the series, or wasn't really explained that well. So that's it. That's it from my ranking. Like I said, this isn't the worst miniseries I've seen. I mentioned this at the end of the last review. I think this one is better than the War of the Worlds miniseries from 2019. But with Black Narcissus 2020, I think it succeeded on one angle of its story, but failed on its other. I'll be checking out the 1947 film soon and reviewing that. Hopefully it'll come out tomorrow on the Nicholas Payne Retro channel if these dates are all lining up. And I'll see what that's all about. Maybe that one's more of a religious drama and less of a horror. Maybe that one ups the horror. Or maybe the whole story's like this. And I think, well, that's a bit disappointing then. But we'll see what the 1947 version's got to offer. Until then, or whatever comes next, thank you for watching. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel. Maybe they can give me a more detailed opinion about how they think. But we'll still check it out anyway. Okay, but as I mentioned in both episodes 2 and 3 review, as I mentioned in the reviews of both. So onto the actual. So, starting with number 3. So, starting with number 3, and I have to be honest, this... It started to inclinate... Oh, my eyes. And then... So it feels like a break from. So I'm not gonna use that if it wasn't for the fact that yeah, as I just mentioned, the character growth is much better in this episode. I mean, it was because it doesn't even succeed, but as it was massively, and I think that's what this series' biggest flaw is it. And I think that's the biggest flaw of this series. If you're going to have supernatural stuff in the series, use it! No. So this series succeeded as a religious drama, but I just think Black Narcissus, whilst it succeeded on one front, but Black Narcissus, I think, whilst it succeeded on one front, it failed miserably. But whilst, until then or until next time, until then or until next time, thank you for watching, and I shall see you guys next time. I shall see you guys whenever the next time. Until then, or whatever comes next on it.